You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Mike Olivas.
Hi, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners something interesting about yourself, and also tell us where you're calling in from.
Calling in from San Mateo, California, our Nav office here. Interesting about me, been married 20 years, have 6 daughters, been to high 70s countries, and 49 to 50 states.
Wow. World traveler here. Give me some of the top favorites of those.
You know, people ask that all the time. It's hard to compare like New Zealand to Italy, but if I had to pick one country in the world, it would probably be Greece, or Italy's a close second.
Yeah, no, I did the Greek islands. Loved it. Also loved Croatia, but I did about 18 countries in Europe before. So you're right. It is hard because a lot of them are just very different in general from a cultural standpoint as well. But haven't done New Zealand. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that one day. Tell us a little bit about Nav. What's going on with Nav? You've had this company for how long again?
7.5 years.
Wow. Okay. And tell us a little bit about what Nav is, what it brings to the marketplace.
And we try to be the simplest place for a small business owner to find financing. We do that because they connect all their data to us. We have native integrations with all the consumer credit bureaus, commercial credit bureaus. We bring in checking account data. So our recommendations are very, very accurate based on our machine learning over time. And so it's really easy to get financing, but not just one time. You know, they stay tied into us over time, monitor all their data, improve their data, and then you get better and better financing options over time.
So when you say you monitor the data, you mean like, for example, if my company goes and gets financing from Nav or is from one of the Nav partners, for example, right, or brokers, we would then, that data is kind of still stuck within still given within your guys' platform. So you can use that to continue financing and to get more, whatever it might be down the road.
Yeah, and you may come in and you don't have great options because your business credit's got some dents on it or whatever. But we have software built around all that data that just automates helping you get it in better shape. So you may come in and get something subprime or prime, and then you're getting robo-advising tips that are saying, hey, log into your account, pay off this tax lien, add another account here, your scores will go up. So now you can refinance out of that into a prime loan. And lots of businesses get financing lots of times over the course of their business through business credit cards, business loans, lots of different things.
And that Nav has all of those different kinds of options.
Yeah, we're the only place you can go to get access to your consumer credit, your business credit, your cash flow, education. You just connect all your accounts. We hit all of our connections with the credit bureaus, and boom, instantly you have a dashboard that tells you how you're doing, what you're qualified for today. So people don't just come to us to get financing. Most come to understand their business credit scores, improve their business credit scores, and then as a consequence of understanding all that, then they get financing here and there.
Yeah, it sounds like a great educational tool for people that may or may not even just be thinking about getting financing. Let's talk about that a little bit. Sometimes I go off the beaten path of some of my normal questions when I have experts like yourself in the financing world, and same thing in the marketing and the sale. I had some people on the sales podcast earlier, but what is it that you feel might be a limiting belief of a small business owner that doesn't want to go get financing? Do they think they can't get it? Are they afraid of the paperwork? Why do you think a lot of them just don't go and get financing?
I think it's because early on, myself included, the very first business I started, a manufacturing company, you go to a bank and they say no. You go to another bank, they say no. And it's a fast and quick no when you're a startup. And so then you just get it in your head early on, business financing, I'm not qualified for, not realizing, well, it's because I was new. And so I think early on you apply because it's almost impossible to get money from a bank that early. And so that just plants in your head. It's too hard to get business financing. And you don't realize there's this whole plethora of options online or in other parts of the country that lend across the nation that you can't walk into. So you don't not even aware they're there.
Do you feel that there's a lot of businesses, or let me rephrase the question. Do you think a business should get financing versus cash flow it? Like, should they get financing to grow better, faster, or if they can cash flow it, do you recommend they just cash flow it?
The answer is so dynamic based on the industry that you're in.
Sure.
Take Nav, for example. We we spent $1 million on credit data before we could even get a customer.
Wow.
And so the cash flow, that's like impossible. Or think of a restaurant, right? It's impossible to cash flow a restaurant. So I think using as little debt as possible is good, just because then that's not an anchor around your neck later. At the same time, businesses tend to borrow money for one of two reasons. Things are going good or things are going bad. So if things are going bad, you kind of have to, right? You want to survive. Things are going good, then the one mistake you can make is be overly optimistic. Like, oh, if I borrowed a bunch of money, it would go even better because I could plow it into this and that, this and that. So I'm kind of agnostic as to whether that's right or wrong. It's just situational. Depends on the person, depends on what their goals are. But I think that they shouldn't be afraid to borrow money. That's when I grew up on a farm and humble circumstances for an American, which you always have to give that disclaimer because I've been around the world, and to be poor in America is like pretty awesome compared to most of the world.
Right.
But my dad always told me, never have debt. And so that was great advice right up until I started my first company and I had no credit. And then I needed to borrow money. In manufacturing, you lay out 80 to 90% of the cost of the job and you get 50% down. So you have to float the rest. You're a creditor back to your customer. And so if I didn't have credit, so I couldn't, it was very difficult to bootstrap. I was able to do it by starting as a servicing company, then an installation company, and then getting into manufacturing until I had enough credit to then borrow money. But it's like crazy that I bootstrapped my way into a manufacturing company. That normally is impossible.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. That there's a lot of cost to that, especially in the manufacturing world. If there's a service industry out there that's listening, or you have a business, you have employees, and more importantly, you have a model that's scalable, that's working now, that you've actually created the processes and procedures, then you have something that is a good part of their debt. I think people look at, and you probably agree with this, Levi, that they look at it as a negative term. It's almost like a sales term, or could be scary enough as like the dentist term, right? Like, it's like, listen, there's smart debt, and people literally raise debt, right? Like, and if you have a system in place that's spitting out specific margins and profitability and bottom line nets, yes, you can go out there and get money against that. And especially right now, while you're listening to this and it's early 2020, rates are insane, whether it's an SBA, whether it's a credit card, 0% interest. And the way that you're able to go out there and actually scale and grow with more people so you can do more business sounds like a win-win. Of course, if you need money just to stay alive and keep the payroll going and cash flow it, that's understandable too. But if you have a proven system, I think that's when you look at a possibility of raising some debt so then you can go and get it. Any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, yes. So I think as a consumer, we tend to think, like at least I think is someone who's done pretty well with my money. For most consumers, your income is sum zero. Maybe there's some salespeople and such that it's not, but they should probably treat their income as sum zero. So it never makes sense to finance a TV at 50% interest. It's just stupid. Oh, I got to invite my friends over for the Super Bowl. For a business, that's not true. Your income is never sum zero, right? And so I testified to the state finance or the Senate Finance Committee in California at the Capitol last year in favor of legislation that would require transparency, but not limit the cost of financing. Because let's say you're in a retail business, some toy is hot with kids and you have bad credit, but you can borrow it at 100% interest for 1 month. Okay. But if your margin's 1,000%, who cares? It pencils
exactly.
out. And so there's lots and lots of scenarios as a small business where maybe there's a contract you want to fill, you got to borrow expensive money to fill it, but then you gain a customer that's recurring, and now you can borrow against future contracts. Okay, so you're going to break even or even maybe lose a little money on the job because the financing was too expensive, but it makes sense because you're winning an ongoing customer. So there's just lots of scenarios where it makes sense to borrow. And you're right, I think there is a stigma on borrowing as a business, which is too bad. Like, we used to try to get people to get referrals, like, oh, you got financing. And like most people don't. It's like, oh, I don't want to tell people I got financing because, like I said earlier, it's usually you only need money because things are going good and you want to make them better. Or they're going bad and you're trying to save your business. I think they're embarrassed. People are going to always think, oh, something's going bad in my business. I had to borrow money.
You're right. I think that we're on this topic, and I like it. I'll add to it a little bit, but kind of moving it forward. A lot of people don't know the difference sometimes, sadly, and that's okay from an entrepreneur standpoint, because it's grind, educate later, right? I know what I'm doing. I know how to make money. Let me do this, especially when you're first starting in bootstrapping. I've never had to go out there and get, for example, VC capital or a loan for my companies. However, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of outsourcing. It was a lot of pulling your hair out from outsourced help, right? It's kind of the way it works, and that's okay from the bootstrap world. But you got to understand what the differences are between giving away your, 10, 15, 20 X percent for investors or VCs versus giving away 3, 4, 5% for a business loan. Even if it's, let's say 7, 8, 10% for a business loan. And the difference is very simple. If you're looking at an acquisition or an exit, and you better be, if you're in business, at least have some kind of end game or model in place, whether it's replacing yourself as an owner or selling and exiting, then you got to look at those differences between how to get there. And if a lot of your answers are trying to get there fast, I think a lot of people just take the VC or take the easy money versus not even looking at the loan thing. Because like you said, they might think they can't even get it. But there is a difference between do you have any thoughts on the investor versus going and getting your own money? Life Nation, we're all striving towards different goals. Maybe your goal is to finally quit the 8 to 5 grind, quit your job, or take the next step with your existing business. Whatever the goal may be, regardless of your reasons, if you are serious about taking the next step and finally trying to build the life that you deserve, the life that you want to live, take the leap of faith. Go to michaellevis.com and let's discuss your goals and life. It's 100% free. There's no obligation. It's michaellevis.com. Schedule a quick call. I'd love to help.
Yeah, there's, at Nav, we focus primarily on small business loans, but as a company, we have raised $100 million of venture capital that was dilutive. We've borrowed, I think, $10 million to help slow that down to a certain extent. But you kind of have like the three types. You have a traditional small business. They can't get venture capital money because they're not qualified. It's not the right industry. You got to get loans. You got folks in the middle who maybe they're a hybrid and there's revenue-based financing like Lighter Capital, Rock and Hammer Ventures. There's some of them out there that will help you give you a loan against your future revenues. And they may take warrants, so it might be a little bit of a hybrid. And then you have venture capital, which is of course fully dilutive. I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. In the vast majority of small business owners, from my experience, starting a lifestyle business. And so they don't necessarily want someone looking over the shoulder that's on their board. They don't necessarily want to take this one restaurant to 1,000 locations and go public. And so for all those folks, it's got to be debt. It's just got to be good old fashioned debt.
Yep.
And then the only thing that you specifically for sure agree to when you raise venture capital is you will provide liquidity, period. Like that's
absolutely
explicit and implicit. And so that's a permanent decision you make, that you've got to go down a path where you go public, get acquired, sell to a private equity fund, a meaningful part of the business so people can get liquidity. So it really depends on what's your end game. What are you trying to accomplish? At Nav, right now we have about 1 million customers that manage their data through us and get financing. We want tens of millions of customers around the globe. So our ambitions were big enough that there was just no likelihood we could bootstrap, especially given indefinitely. We did put in the first $500,000 ourselves, but there was no way we were going to be able to do that. And even if we could, people would catch on to the idea, and then it's a race. And if I'm trying to bootstrap it and someone else raises $10 million to speed up growth, then I'm going to lose anyways. And so, I think through that lens, am I building a lifestyle business or a legacy business? And at Nav, we want to have a legacy impression on small businesses first in America and then the rest of the world, that we help them succeed as a business. And so it's just so simple. They can sign up in 2 minutes at our site, have all their data in one spot, see how others see them, get loans, get business credit cards. And it's just like, you can only do that through technology, right? You can't do that through thousands and thousands of sales reps that got to do manual analysis and such.
Yeah, no, I think it's a no-brainer, guys. If you're out there listening and you're a small business thinking about the differences between what we're talking about now and, hey, I got this credit card that lets me have 0% interest for 9 months, and I go get a new one, or just go take a look and find out what that possible continuous cash flow or credit line and or just loan that you can go get. Check out navi.com. I think that's a no-brainer. Levi, you're a self-taught, obviously serial entrepreneur. You started 8 companies, right, in the last 20 years, some probably obviously more successful than others. But, why do you think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that end up just throwing in the towel and saying, I quit?
I think there's a laundry list of reasons. The first is, I think a lot of people make the mistake of going, XYZ is my passion, so I want to do that for a living. And doing it for a living actually kills the passion that they had.
Yeah.
And And so that's a big mistake, right? Like I love to, like I was talking to my oldest daughter is a senior in high school, and she's been for years working on 2 and 3D animation and wants to go to Cal Arts, but she loves to bake. And so the other day she's like, hey, maybe I want to grow up and be a baker. And I like heart palpitations. I'm like, okay, listen, do you like to sleep in 3 a.m. in the morning, but you're not actually going to bake for a living. You're going to be a business owner for a living and hire someone to bake. And it was like a short, quick conversation, like, okay, back to 2 and 3D design. That's my path.
Yeah.
And so, so I think that's one reason. I think another reason is a lot of people don't, even if they have a craft. So maybe they did love, I'm a carpenter or whatever. They don't realize I'm also going to be a salesperson, a collections agent. I'm going to be customer service. They just don't think like, hey, this is actually a business model. They're usually drawn into it. So they go, at some point they go, hey, I make $35 an hour as a journeyman carpenter. And I realize my boss is bidding in 55 to the bid. Like I want that extra $20, not realizing overhead and all these other things. So I think that's one of the most common things I've seen is people didn't realize I'm signing up and I'm going to ruin my craft for me, or I'm just going to hate all these other jobs that I actually have, which aren't doing the craft that I love. And then the last one is just obvious, which is just the stress. Like you don't get to go put your head on the pillow at night and not be thinking about it. And so some people don't realize you're signing up for 24/7 year round.
Yeah.
And that's not true when you got a job.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the corporate world and there's a place for it. There's a need for it. I know there's many people out there that kill it with it. Right. But there's a blanket. There's definitely that safety blanket that it's something happens. It's not your risk. Right. And that's why entrepreneurs have the reward that they get from a possible exit or from that profitability that starts happening when they start understanding it and getting it and systems are in place. But it takes 5, 10 plus years, right? We always say on the show, and everybody else, you probably heard this, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And, and it's the total truth. I mean, people think that Walmart just popped up and it wasn't just some random little store in the middle of nowhere at some point that learned how to scale and learned how to franchise, right? And so I think that that's really good advice. I think that I agree with you because a lot of people push the passion thing that I talk to on this show. And I don't cringe, but I also don't agree. I agree with what you just said. If you turn your passion into a job, is that going to be your passion anymore? Probably not, right? Like you just turned it into a job. And when you associate the word job, I mean, we all going to build ourselves. At some point, you build yourself a job as an entrepreneur, and then you start working on getting yourself out of that and hopefully become maybe a visionary, or the passion kind of continues that way. But or you can pivot in different parts of the company if it grows, obviously, in that angle. But I think that was a really good point, that be careful with your passion. If your passion's dancing, just dance when you're not working on your business, right? Like that's okay. So give me a little bit about what you're excited about within the financial and loan industry. Tell me if there's anything exciting that you're pretty stoked about with Nav.
Yeah, for sure. So I think in the future, I mean, I don't think this is what we know it's headed this direction. It's kind of silly that you still have to apply for loans. There are scenarios where you don't. If you're a merchant Square or you're on Clover and Nav is integrated with lots of financing options, you know before you apply what you're qualified for. Like think about how obvious it is. Like if you want to go buy a brand new pair of Jordans, like if you're qualified to buy them before you walk in. You either have the money or you don't. The data sits somewhere. It's in your head. And so for us, when a customer signs up, they get access, like I said, on an ongoing basis to personal credit, business credit, cash flow, and point of sale education. Those data sets are what are used to approve tons and tons of types of financing. So at Nav, we've developed about 12 automated APIs where you don't have to go apply. We already sit on the data, so why would we make you go leave and then go through all this work to apply, which you still have to do on 100 of the options that we offer, because we depend on those lenders to integrate with us. And so one by one, kind of the biggest one and our most successful so far is with American Express, where we became the first place you could get approved for an American Express business credit card or business loan outside of their walls, because we already sit on the data. We have an API. So that's what we're most excited about is when you decide to start a business, unless you're a small business accountant, you didn't start your business because you love finance and you love financing. And so if you think of the work of going out and applying for 5 different loans, weighing your options, if you didn't have to ever do that, you didn't have to go apply, you shouldn't have to. Your data sits in the cloud all over the place. And so that's what we're the most excited about, is continue to march down that path of automating all those connections. So instead of like a Square I mentioned, where you can see their loan. So you either see it or you don't. You can't apply for it. You're either qualified or not. That's super rad, but it's one type of loan. It's limited in what you can do with it. Whereas with Clover, which is our partner and Square's main competitor, we have 100 financing options there now now adding the APIs to multiple offers. That's how it should be. Instead of Square device, you see one. In Clover, you see everything from Bank of America to American Express to OnDeck and Cabbage and all the alternative options as well. That's what we're most excited about, because I've lived that misery. I got about 30 different commercial loans. I've started 5 small businesses and 3 tech companies that have raised venture capital. And at those 5 small businesses, I got 2 SBA loans, multiple equipment leases, just about every type of financing you could get. And it was a pain in the ass, like flat out. And so that's what we're most excited about, is just continuing to make financing easier and easier through Nav, because you're already approved. You don't have to go find out if you're approved. You just know you are because you signed up for Nav.
Yeah, no, if you get rid of that mailer that says pre-approval, everyone's going to love you, right? And I think that's awesome, by the way. And so hopefully you do, right? Not just because we hate mail, just because like it's just such horse crap when it comes down to like, okay, listen, great. I'm pre-approved. I also may have won $1 million through the sweepstakes. Like, right. So I think when it's all said and done, like you're right. The data's there, like, especially from a transactional type of company, right? If you're a product or you have that kind of Clover system set up, you already know what transactions are happening or about to happen. You have that historical data at your fingertips. So I really got to drop all these P&Ls and all of these different like tax documents. I'm sure at some point that might be necessary, but the true potential of that approval sounds like is what you guys are really working on to make that a little bit more of a faster process, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So before we have some parting kind of like exit strategy here, tell people where they can find you. Is it just Navi? Is it Navi.com? That's Navi.com. Is that right?
No, just nav.com. Nav, like navigation.
Oh, not Navi. I'm sorry, nav.com. So it's nav.com.
Yep, and or download our app. All right there in palm of your hand.
And it connects to all of the bank accounts, the credit cards, everything.
Yep, personal credit, business credit, all 3 business credit bureaus. Yep.
Okay. Before we jump off, what's the one piece of parting advice that you'd give to current entrepreneurs out there right now?
So people ask me this a lot. So the answer is consistent. My advice to other entrepreneurs is to be authentic to the point of consistent vulnerability. You have so many things you got to worry about as an entrepreneur coming at you from all directions. And so when we're not authentic, we think we got to pretend we're somebody we're not, because we think we got to impress this person or that. It becomes an emotional and psychological tax that we carry, and it gets heavy, and it only ever gets heavier over time. And people love authenticity. Everyone's scared to offer it, but people love to reciprocate. And so I wish I would have learned that early on. My first 5 or 6, maybe 7 years, I imagined what the world thought I needed to be a successful business owner, and I tried to project that image. And it was taxing. And any tax you pay, you can't pay somewhere else. So you can either give it to your business, you can give it to a relationship, or you can waste it. And if you're wasting it on inauthenticity, it's lower likelihood your business succeeds. Maybe you're trading off now your relationship with your significant other is going to fail. Your kids hate you. There's always trade-offs. We have limited capacity as human beings. So I wish I would have learned. Luckily, I was in my mid to late 20s when I learned it, which is still pretty early. But that I've lived free ever since then, and just not worried about what people think. Wear my Nav T-shirt almost anywhere I go, and I wear T-shirts. I shouldn't pretend I don't wear T-shirts in my real life, and that's what right. I do.
Yeah, he's rocking one right now, guys. If you're listening to this, you can jump on the YouTube channel. He's rocking his Nav shirt. I'm rocking a white V-neck, which I always rock anyways. I mean, I don't care if it's here or if I'm going to, eat dinner. I just make it simple on myself. But I love that, being authentic. And there's so much more and more just actually data behind that, which I love. And I love that you're mentioning that, because people can see when you're authentic, and they like that. I try to do the same thing. Just be yourself and you win the game, whether you're selling something or you're talking to some of your employees. Be real, be authentic, be kind. And I think you're going to definitely win the game. And I think patience is obviously in there too. So again, Levi, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything. I hope everyone checks out nav.com if you are looking for a business loan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Life Nation, you got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Leibus, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow, because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.